Hey there, welcome to the Movie Review Mom YouTube channel. If this is the very first time you found me, yay, finally, you're here. And if you're a returning subscriber, yay, thanks for coming back. My subscribers already know that my goal is to save you time and money by giving you the scoop on filmmaking quality and content so you can decide whether or not you want to watch a particular film. So today, the movie I'm reviewing is called Wolves. This dark action comedy just opened in select theaters and on Apple TV Plus. It's rated R, and for good reason. I'll give you some tips for parents in a minute. It's an hour and 48 minutes, and my overall movie review mom grade is a B. I actually got a kick out of it. So first I'm going to give you an overview in a nutshell, and then I'll point out things I liked, things I didn't like, tips for parents, themes worth talking about if you watch this with other people, funny lines, interesting lines, and we'll finish up with other films that are sort of similar that you might also really like. All right, so let's dive in. In a nutshell, this buddy story is about two underworld fixers who suddenly meet on the same job trying to cover up a prominent New York district attorney's scandalous mistake. They're forced to work together as their night spirals out of control in many ways that neither one of them expected. The film was directed and written by John Watts, who is most known for his work on the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Already, the movie has won the d'Argento for Best OTP at the Venice Film Festival. Now, congrats to the team. And by the way, OTP in film jargon basically means one true pairing, which is often used to describe the perfect romantic relationship or best on-screen couple. In this case, it refers to George Clooney and Brad Pitt with all of their fantastic chemistry and awesomeness. So, quick tips for parents. The very first word we hear is an F bomb. Then there are a million more to come, as well as other profanity. We see a dead body and blood splatters within the first 2 minutes. Again, there is a lot more of that to come. There is talk of illegal drugs, and we see several blocks of cocaine, talk of prostitution. A man runs around in his tidy whities for quite a few scenes. There's violence, various weapons are used, and people die bloody deaths. And we see lots of bullet holes and that kind of thing. Some of the themes that are illustrated very well are choices, friendship, loyalty, fixers, drug deals, and power. Now, there were a lot of things I really liked about this film. The cast includes two big heavy hitters and fan favorites, George Clooney and Brad Pitt. Their chemistry is undeniable, and it's really fun to see them in a film together in this bromance. They first starred together in the hugely popular hit franchise Ocean's 11, the movie that came out in 2001. And then they were together again in that franchise in 2004 and 2007 sequels. We don't really learn their characters' names in this movie. Instead, they're listed as Margaret's man and Pam's man, which I think is kind of hilarious. Amy Ryan also did a great job, but she's really only in the movie for a very short time in Act One. Austin Abrams was impressive. He's had a lot of smaller roles in quite a few other movies for years, really, but this one put him on the map for me personally. He did his own stunts, which were pretty intense and hysterical as well. We get to hear the voice of Academy Award winner Frances McDormand. I just adore her. Too bad we don't get to see her, but her voice adds intrigue and her talents do not go unnoticed. The slow motion crash sequence where a guy gets hit by a car and lands on his feet is pretty amazing and just awesome and hilarious. There is humor, both spoken and visual. That's one such scene, but there are many more. The musical score by Theodore Shapiro perfectly sets the mood for every scene. I really noticed it and appreciated it. The title gets its name from a conversation between George Clooney's character and a bad guy. So George Clooney's character coldly states, "I got a job to do." And then the bad guy, who's played by Zlatko Burek, says, "Oh, I see, the professional, the lone wolf." So both Brad Pitt and George Clooney believe that each one of them is a lone wolf, only to discover that they're both basically the same person, doing the same thing, dressing the same, and even talking the same, as another character points out to them. And they're like, hey. And then they're kind of like, oh. Now, as an English professor at a university and an author, I readily admit that when I first saw the spelling of the title, it hurt my heart just a little bit because it's grammatically incorrect. But once I understood the concept of this lone wolf idea, I decided it actually was pretty clever. So there you go, in case you're wondering about the title as well. The banter throughout the movie is entertaining. The action sequences are done very well. And like I said, often very entertaining. Keep watching during the final rolling credits for some amusing footage from the cameras that were talked about in the story several times. Audiences who love Clooney and Pitt are already excited about the possibility of a sequel of this comedy action. I would definitely watch it. Now, with all of that praise, there were just a few things that I didn't like or thought could have been done better or differently. For example, it's kind of odd that the film did get a bigger marketing push, considering the huge star power featured in it by Brad Pitt and George Clooney, right? It just slipped out there. Uh, Now, I know studios are really struggling in a lot of different ways. And so I don't know if it was a financial decision or I don't know. But anyway, there's this really long race car scene that doesn't quite make sense. For example, we see George Clooney racing in this scene, speeding along, traveling a long distance to catch this guy who's running on foot, suggesting that the runner could even go that distance. Then, without any explanation, Brad Pitt's character magically is able to just show up without any kind of transportation. I mean, how did he get there? And that happens a couple of times. I'm like, wait, what? But again, it's kind of tongue in cheek, and the movie is definitely making fun of itself as it should. And I appreciate that. Some people are complaining that the story isn't anything particularly fresh or new, but I didn't mind. Yes, we have seen these types of movies and even scenes, but I was still entertained because I'm just such a fan of both of the actors. All right, so whenever I watch movies, I write down funny lines and interesting lines simply to share them with you so you can get a taste for the script writing quality and dialogue in particular. Now, you can see all of them on my written review, but I'll share some of them with you right now. So when the movie starts off and these two characters meet, George Clooney's the older, wiser one, and Brad Pitt's like, whatever. And so George Clooney says something, and then Brad Pitt's like, thank you, sensei. So there's a lot of sarcasm and snarky chit chat, which is amusing for sure. And then several things happen, and then one of them says, and yet, and then something else happens, and then another one goes, and yet, and then another crazy thing happens, and then they're both like, and yet, and both of them are trying to figure out what's going on during the entire movie. And so that is super entertaining as well. Now they go to this super yucky hotel motel, and Brad Pitt's character says, I feel like I'm getting syphilis just standing here. And I've been in places like that. In fact, a place recently where I'm just like, I got to get out of this place. I'm going to get a disease. Anyway, so I just thought that was kind of funny. And then Brad Pitt's character at one point tells another character, I think you have a fundamental understanding of what is happening here, which is absolutely what is happening there. There are all kinds of crazy things that they're trying to figure out. And then George Clooney is doing all of this stuff, trying to fix this and clean this location where somebody just died. And he says to Brad Pitt's character, so you're just going to sit there and slurp your soda? And Brad Pitt's character says, I'm going to supervise, which is kind of how most people look at supervisors, that they just sit around and observe. They don't actually help. And then another cute line is spoken by Austin Abrams' character, the kid, who's at the center of all of this mayhem. And he says, today was the first day that I ever felt cool. Not that you guys would understand. You're like the coolest guys I've ever seen. And it's cute. And he does such a great job in his role. And then I wrote down some interesting lines that kind of speak to the theme and the underlying messages of the movie. And so George Clooney at one point says, I know what bad feels like. Now, the movie has a lot of humor, but there are some profound moments and decisions that are made that you realize there's some depth here, which I really enjoyed and appreciated. And then another deep line that Brad Pitt's character says is when you take a job, you give your word, and that word is a measure of a man. And as Brad Pitt's saying it, George Clooney's kind of walking away and he stops and he really considers that message. And you could tell he's considering what kind of man is he. And I loved that moment, that it's not just a silly, goofy, ridiculous movie, but there is some depth there. And anyway, I really like that. All right, so I had more lines, but go to my website, you can read more of them. So whenever I watch movies, I instantly think of other films that I want to recommend. And so the first one is Pulp Fiction. It's the 30th anniversary this year. And so I don't know if you're a big fan of it. I know some people love it, love it. And I didn't love it as much as everybody else did. And I kept thinking, am I missing something here? Now, the acting was fantastic. The cast was terrific and all of that. But anyway, there's some of the Quentin Tarantino type of gore and violence. And so if that's what you're hoping this movie is, you're going to get some of that. But I thought that there was more humor in this one rather than in Pulp Fiction, even though there is humor in Pulp Fiction. And then another one I thought of because it stars Brad Pitt is one that came out last year called Bullet Train, where it's got crazy violence and blood and humor. And then another one that is about a fixer is an older movie that came out a while ago. It's called Ray Donovan. I'm actually going to queue up Bullet Train. So in case you haven't seen that one, definitely pay attention to the tips for parents. It's rated R, it's not family friendly, and you may not appreciate some of that content because it is extreme. But click on that little rectangle after I leave and say goodbye here, and then you can watch it because I'll queue that up for you. So when you get a minute, run over, visit me on all the social media sites. I'm everywhere. You can visit me, especially on Instagram, where you can find me as Movie Review Mom, but you can also find me as my author name, Trina Boice, and you can learn about my online courses, my products, my other shenanigans. Thanks so much for sticking around. I really appreciate your support. Ring that bell, give it a thumbs up, comment down below. All of those are free functions that YouTube loves, and they'll spread magical YouTube fairy dust all over my channel. So I appreciate that again. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.